two new reports showing the real impact of the president's tax cuts, including a new report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics revealing that the U.S. added 500,000 fewer jobs in 2018 and at the start of 2019 than previously announced. It's the latest piece of evidence that President Trump's tax cuts provided less of a jolt to the economy than once thought. And the losses come a lot from the retail and hospitality workers, including restaurant servers, who Time magazine describes as a major part of the millions of workers left behind from the past decade's economic boom. The impact of the deficit, well, it's growing faster than expected under the tax cuts, and a new forecast predicts the deficit will widen to $1 trillion for the 2020 fiscal year. I'm joined now by Maya McGuinness, president of the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. Ben Goldberger is executive editor at Time magazine that has the new issue out today, The Left Behind Economy, produced in partnership with the Fuller Project, a nonprofit newsroom that reports on issues impacting women. Maya, does any of this surprise you?
Unfortunately, it's not a surprise because so much of what's happening fiscally was entirely predictable. You can't have a massive unpaid for tax cut where there were promises it was going to pay for itself, but anybody who believed them was living in la-la land, followed by two massive unpaid for spending increases, and be surprised that the national debt is growing at a pace that is really unprecedented when the economy is this strong. And you layer that against this article in Time magazine. But this has real profound effects on American workers, particularly the most vulnerable. And as we may be heading into a recession, all of these problems, these fiscal problems, these economic problems are going to become much, much worse. And with kind of a broken political environment where we can't seem to get anything done, the hopes for fixing them and getting out ahead of the problems really has me incredibly concerned.
The jobs revisions do, it's fair to say, still point to an overall healthy job market. But as you point out, Ben, in Time's cover story, service jobs are expected to grow. They're the ones that are expected to grow in the coming years. And, quote, waitresses are emblematic of the type of job expected to grow most in the American economy in the next decade. Low-wage service workers with no guaranteed hours or income. And the numbers, they tell the story. The average annual wage for example, personal care aides, a growth place, $24,000. Food prep, wait staff, about $21,000, a little over $21,000. And all of this as jobs that pay an awful lot more, manufacturing, are going away. Is this what we're left with?
In many ways, yes. I think one of the biggest stories of the last recession was that manufacturing jobs plummeted. We lost a very substantial sum, just under 2 million, while the jobs that remained, and in many cases have grown since, are in food service, which tend to be tipped wages or the sorts of jobs that we associate with the gig economy, in which you gain a degree of flexibility, but you trade a huge amount of security in the process. So in the case of America's waiters and waitresses, the vast majority of them work in states in which there is a tipped minimum wage, which is significantly below the federal minimum wage. The expectation is that the 10, 15, 20, 25, if the server's really lucky, percent that a diner leaves on their bacon and eggs will make up the cumulative difference. But in many cases, it doesn't even come close, because right now the federal tip minimum wage is only $2.13, and it hasn't budged since 1991.
And the president likes to talk about how much better the economy is for women, how much better it is for blacks. But isn't that exactly who is getting these low-paying jobs?
Disproportionately. 70% of America's servers are women. Some 40% of them are people of color. It absolutely is those who do not have the traditional benefits of class privilege.
Maya, the president was asked about the possibility of a recession yesterday, and I just want to play for folks what he had to say.
The fake news, of which many of you are members, is trying to convince the public to have a recession. Let's have a recession. The United States is doing phenomenally well.
Look, nobody wants a recession. Let's just say that. Nobody's, angling for a recession. And frankly, the president's approval numbers on the economy are stronger than in almost anything else. They may be his highest numbers. But what are the warning signs you see, Maya?
Well, first off, part of the warning signs is actually that there's been good news for so long. We have had an expansion for a record amount of time, and the business cycle isn't gone. There is going to be an economic downturn. And, of course, there are signs that that is happening, everything from the inverted yield curve. But I think the biggest issue really is the massive amounts of uncertainty that now exist in our economy. And you layer that on top of these unsustainable debt levels, which the CBO referenced yesterday in its big report that came out, and we are very vulnerable. We are skating on thin ice. So any additional amounts of uncertainty or pessimism could put us in a recession. On top of the immediate risks of a recession, which I do think are likely to happen just because of the normal business cycle, you also have the fact that economic growth is going to be lower in this country going forward than it has been in the past because of the aging of the population. This is something we have known about, we've failed to address, and so we have real challenges on a number of fronts, from helping to grow the economy to also dealing with these important issues of mobility and income insecurity. We have an outdated social safety net, unprepared to help deal with these, headed towards insolvency, and we have an unsustainable debt level. So if we don't address all these issues that we know are there, a recession is going to be much more painful, as are the longer prospects for economic growth.
Yeah, Ben, one of the eye-opening things about the Time magazine cover story is exactly what she said, which is about sort of the aging of America. If you're a waitress, the chances of you having a fabulous retirement plan are very, very, very low. And if you don't have enough money to live on while you're working, how are you going to live at 70 or 75 if you want to retire?
That's a really good question. The odds of you having a fabulous retirement plan are virtually non-existent. There are some efforts to sort of professionalize the industry, but on the whole, it has always been thought of in many ways as supplemental work, something that people did part-time or to help get through school. It wasn't perceived as a full-time career, and as a result, people don't have the benefits that we associate with traditional white-collar work.
It's a great cover story. People should read it in Time magazine. Ben Goldberger, thank you for that. Maya McGinnis, always good to see you. Appreciate you both coming on.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.